Hey Adventure, so today is going to be my wrap up for the month of January 2025. So I read 8 books this month and I read I finished one physically and one on ebook. And then the other 6 were audiobooks. Hopefully I have more time to physically read in February, but I don't know if I will. Alright, so start off. The first book that I listened to was Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor, and this one has been on my radar for a while now, several years, and probably I think since before I started doing BookTube, maybe even. But it's been on my radar for a while, and I it's one that I've been intrigued by, but never really been like, okay, I need to read this one. But then last year when I was doing my author interview with Charles McGarry for his book The Nomad's Crucible. Man, can't remember names today. I asked him at the end of the interview what is a book that he would specifically recommend that I read, and he said Strange the Dreamer, and the other book in the duology is Muse of Nightmares. And so those 2 books together are he mentioned, and so I figured I'll start with Strange the Dreamer, especially since that one actually has an audiobook. The other ones that people have mentioned I don't believe have audiobooks, and I guess I've only done one other one, which is with I've only asked this question of one other author since I started doing author interviews, and that was Liam, and he said Sometime Lofty Towers, which is by David C. Smith. And this one doesn't have a audiobook, and so it's not one that I can read anytime soon. Well, I might can read it sometime soon if I get it, but probably not. It's not likely to happen anytime soon. But it is one that's on my list. Anyways, that's unimportant. What I'm here to say is that I read Strange the Dreamer specifically because Chaz mentioned that I should read it, and so I figured, okay, I have some time. It's available on an audiobook at the moment from my library, and so I picked it up and listened to it. That was a lot of rambling to get to the point where I can mention my few thoughts that I have. And what thoughts I have are basically, there was a lot of aspects about it that I liked. I liked how atmospheric it was in a lot of instances. I liked the world and the setting. The story was okay, it's a little bit weird, and it's not exactly written for me, but it was enjoyable enough. And I, of course, once I get to my review of it, I will have more thoughts, more full thoughts and stuff on that book, but I am not there yet. So what else do I have? Next book that I finished is The Gathering Storm, which I believe is book 13 or book 12 I believe, of Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan. And this is actually the first one that Brandon Sanderson wrote anything on, and so this is written mostly by Brandon Sanderson with, of course, notes and stuff like that from Jordan. And the story I enjoyed a lot better than I enjoyed the previous book, which is fairly common opinion, I believe. And I thought that although you could clearly tell that it was no longer Jordan writing it, from the writing style, I thought that Brandon Sanderson did a really good job at adapting his writing style for that series. And so I was impressed by that, and that was nice to see. That was good to see. I'm glad that series had the opportunity to be finished. And I am also of the opinion that even though there's a lot of really good stuff in that series, it is not my favorite series. And for me, it's just been kind of for a lot of it. But The Gathering Storm was quite a bit better. There's definitely some good things going on in this story, and it's nice to see that we're wrapping up towards an ending. Then I did my reread of Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, which is book 5 of the Harry Potter series by J.K. Rowling. And I have long, basically since I've watched the movies for the first time and then read the books afterwards for the first time, said that book 5 and movie 5 is my favorite of the series, and as of this reread, I still agree with that. Of course, I have books 6 and 7 yet to reread, and so we will see what happens with that. But as of right now, yes, I fully am still in agreement that book 5 is my favorite of the series so far. That has a lot to do with how this one really feels like the stakes are starting to be raised, and that there's real things happening, that there's a real danger outside the school for the kids, for Harry specifically, and just the world doesn't feel quite so whimsical anymore. It's starting to get dark. You're starting to realize that this is not just something that's going to go away. And so yeah, there's a lot of really good stuff in this one. Yeah, that's about all I have to say about it. All right, so the next book that I listened to was The Way of Adan by Philip Chase. This is the first book in the Adan trilogy, and I went into this book fully expecting to really appreciate the book, as well as liking a lot of what was going on with it. And also, I probably wouldn't have picked it up at the time, except that J.R. Carroll mentioned that he was reading it, and so I figured I'd pick it up as well, and we could discuss it a little bit as we were going. And largely I enjoyed the book, but I do have some thoughts about it, and so absolutely once I get to my review of it, I will have more thoughts to talk about. Overall, though, I feel like I was expecting to enjoy it more than I ended up enjoying it. That's not to say that it was bad, that's just to say that my expectations were higher than my actual enjoyment when I came out of it. There's a lot of really good stuff in here, and it does feel like the first book in a trilogy, so maybe as I continue through the series, I will enjoy things more and more. But as of right now, it was, I think on Goodreads I just stuck it at like a 4-star, but it's somewhere between like a 3.5 and a 4 for me. There's a lot of good stuff in it, a lot of good, you can clearly see Chase's influences on his storytelling, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think it's a little slower than I wanted, or a little more almost boring than I wanted, but there is a lot of good stuff in it to enjoy, and I'll talk more about stuff once I actually do my review, so don't take this as negative as it seems to be sounding, at least as I feel like it's sounding as I'm saying it. But anyways, let's continue on here. Then I listened to Peter Pan by J.M. Barrie. This is one that I have had on my list forever. I didn't read this as a kid, and I know that I should have, but I didn't. And then I finally, once people started talking about it on book 2, I was like, okay, I really need to actually prioritize this and actually read it, and I still didn't. I'm very excited to have finally read the book. It was very enjoyable, very whimsical in a lot of ways, just a fun book to read. There are a lot of themes in it, and they mostly revolve around family and childhood and parenthood and stuff like that, and there's some really strong stuff with that. There's also just a lot of whimsy and children's fairy tale type stuff going on with it, and all of that's really good. Then I read The Legend of by Aaron N. Hall. This is one that the author sent me and asked me to read and review, and I will get a review out before it's published sometime in February, so it'll probably be maybe even my next review that I publish. I'm not sure. I need to take a look at when it's supposed to be published and stuff like that. But this is one that I will have a review out of fairly soon here. So it's a self-published. It's kind of hard to describe the age range, because it's, in a lot of ways, it feels middle grade or young adult, and then in a lot of ways I would not give it to a kid to read. There's a lot of things that I wouldn't want my own kids to read about in it, and there's also stuff that just kids it's just going to go completely over their heads and stuff like that. And so it's kind of defies age range a little bit. It was a fun story, like it's a fun read if you just sit down and read it. There's a lot of stuff to enjoy, and just from an enjoyment standpoint of having fun while reading a book type thing. And I liked a lot about it, and I do have some thoughts and stuff about it, so absolutely be sure to, if you're curious about this one, be sure to check out my review, because I will have a review out for that one very soon, simply because the author asked me to, and that's fine. I just happened to have time to fit this one in on ebook, and basically I read ebooks on my lunch break, and so I can get a little bit of about 20 minutes in per day during the week of ebook reading, and so that helps me to get through a little bit, and I have got through a lot more ebooks recently than I ever have in the past, so that's a good thing. but I am not a fast reader on ebook at all, and I don't enjoy it that much. So the next one that I finished is my reread of The Hobbit by J.R. Tolkien. This is one that I was supposed to have finished in December, and I didn't because I ran out of time. I thought that I would have had, okay, so I started this like 2 weeks before the end of December, and I figured, oh, that's plenty of time for me to finish it before December ends, and I ended up not having very much time to read at all, which is fine. I just didn't get nearly as much of this done as I needed to. I read just over half of it in December, and then I ended up slowly working my way through the rest of it in January, which was, I had less time to read in January than I was hoping as well, and so it took me towards the end of the month to finish this, but I did finish it. Very much enjoyed it, as I always do. I did read, I think, like 2 chapters of it on ebook because I finished Legend of and I didn't have another ebook at the moment, so I was like, okay, well, let's pick that up so that I can continue making my way through it. But I did read the vast majority of this out of this physical copy here, which is nice because I like to have read from each of the physical copies of the books that I own. Yes, so that's my thoughts on The Hobbit. As always, it's just fantastic. It's hard to say, but it may have taken its spot as number 1 again for me. I vacillate between Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit as my favorite all the time, and I think after this read, Hobbit's back at number 1, and we will see what happens after I finish my Lord of the Rings reread, which I'm doing this in a different manner this year, and so I will talk about that next, actually. So the final thing that I listened to was the Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring by J.R. Tolkien. So this is the way that I chose to do my reread of the Lord of the Rings this year is BBC did a audio drama of the Lord of the Rings, and it's adapted for an audio drama. It's not just a word for word reading of the book, and so there's adaptations made, there's things cut out as necessary, but it takes as much as possible. It takes directly from the verbiage of the book and applies it to this audio drama, and then just cuts out the things that need to be cut out for sake of time and not having a super long audio drama. And this is I've listened to this audio drama in the past. I think my first reread of Lord of the Rings was with this, and I remember sitting and listening to it and just being completely immersed in the experience of reading the Lord of the Rings or listening to the Lord of the Rings performed to me. It's got Ian Holm, who plays Frodo, who voices Frodo in the audio drama. In the movies, he of course played Bilbo, but it's just the cast is phenomenal. The construction of this audio drama is very, very well done. The soundtrack fits the world so well. It quite honestly, the way that the audio drama is adapted is closer to my personal envisioning of the world when I first read the books than the movies are, including the music, including the voices for the characters. Aragorn is a little bit off. I always imagined him to have a little bit lower of a voice, but not quite as low as in this audio drama. But that's neither here nor there. Overall, very, very well performed. The Gollum is very different from Andy Serkis's Gollum, but just as accurate to the character, just as good of an adaptation, in my opinion. Music is fantastic, like I mentioned. Like this, the main piece of, I guess the theme, if you want to call it that, for the audio drama is one that I have had stuck in my head since I first listened to it, and me and my brothers would hum it to each other because we just have it, and we're like, what is this from? Oh yeah, it's from that Lord of the Rings that we listened to, type thing. And just, it's so stuck in my head, so ingrained in my head. And yeah, just a fantastic audio drama. It does cut out things. When the hobbits leave Buckland, it skips immediately to them coming into Bree, arriving at Bree, and it just completely skips the Old Forest, completely skips Tom Bombadil, the Barrow Downs, all that kind of stuff. And it is rather abrupt, and it feels like some things were missing there, but it also isn't because of the way that they adapt it so that it's not just word for word. It allows you to be okay, I guess, with, if you don't know the story as well as I do, you don't feel the lack of what's going on there with this skip from leaving Buckland to arriving in Bree. But it is noticeable. There's some other things that are noticeable. The Council of Elrond is shorter. There's just stuff here and there. they don't see the trolls. They don't come across the trolls in this adaptation, stuff like that. So there's some minor details that are left out, or some things that are condensed in order to tell the story quicker. But overall, it's just a fantastic audio drama, and very, very much enjoying listening to this, even though it's not exactly like the book. It's not a perfect adaptation of the book because it leaves things out, but it is a really good adaptation, and definitely recommend for those who are wanting to experience Lord of the Rings in a new way to do it this way. Read it from listen to this audio drama or something like that. Listen to an audiobook, listen to an audio drama, read it from a different perspective, whatever it might be. There's lots of ways that you can do that. That is what I read or listened to in the month of January. Thank you guys for watching an Erudite Adventure. This video has been way longer than I intended it to be. I rambled quite a bit, and we will see how much of that gets cut out, because oftentimes I will cut some things out that aren't necessary. And yeah, thank you guys for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. We will see you guys again soon. Stay tuned.